Even though the Nintendo Switch is marketed as a home video game console, it's really just a souped-up handheld that you can connect to a TV. So even though I like to call this the first home console that I've had, it's really still just a handheld system. And as someone that has basically grown up with handheld gaming, one thing that's always kind of been a sore spot are ergonomics. Now granted, with more dedicated handheld systems, those can kind of get away with it if they're light enough. Like, I remember the DS Lite being okay to hold because it wasn't heavy like this. Even the Switch Lite, I've gotten to hold one recently, completely untethered from any sort of like demo kiosk tether, and that is infinitely more comfortable to hold than this, just because the Lite is, well, lighter than this. And so because this is as dense as it is, I've been looking at some solutions to basically make this more comfortable to play in handheld mode. I specifically have 3 different solutions. They all approach this problem in their own way. Starting things off, the Split Pad Pros. It does kind of look like someone took a Pro controller and just sliced it in half, but once you attach these onto the system, while it may feel weird at first, it's honestly not a bad way to go. You still do have access to, all the buttons and sticks that you normally would on a typical Pro controller. And on each of them, you have a turbo button to make one of these, turbo, as well as assign buttons because each one of these has their own back paddle. That being said, these do lack rumble, motion, and NFC functionality. So it's literally just the buttons and the sticks. So if you like to play games that utilize motion controls a lot, you probably should just pass on these. So I'm gonna go in a bit of a weird tangent, but the Switch console itself has motion capabilities. Those of us that actually have played with the Labo kits or with Game Builder Garage know that the tablet itself has motion capabilities. So they could just patch in the ability to sense the motion just from the console itself, rather than what's typically done is they take the motion from the right Joy-Con. So really, they could just put in a little bit of code that says if playing in handheld mode, and if the game isn't receiving any sort of signal from the motion sensor in here, to just default to the tablet. And you want to know a game that actually does use the motion sensing in the system itself? Yeah, it's Clubhouse. And it's in my beloved Yacht Dice. So if you're playing just with a wireless controller, you can shake it around to shake your dice cup. And as you can see, I have the Split Pad Pros on. I'm even going to enable airplane mode, if I can hit it. There we go. Just to show you that I don't have any wireless controllers connected, and yeah, this game uses the motion sensing from the system, but like no other games do. So it's something they could patch in, but they just don't. Anyways, but yeah, these are quite comfortable to hold. I have used them quite a bit when I was playing through A Hat in Time, when I got it on sale. The grips are these like nice textured, and basically the rest is smooth plastic. So you do get a bit of extra tactility because of the texturing, but it's not that big to where it's really noticeable. Though I will say that they're definitely not as like thick and more ergonomic like an actual Pro controller. They feel like a bit more narrow, but it's not a deal breaker. It's just something that, as someone that has used the Pro controller a lot, was definitely the first thing that I noticed. Although that's probably done because you can keep these on the Switch when you go to dock it. And because there's the 2 USB ports that would be like right here, that's probably why they had to keep these to a certain thickness, just so then those USB ports stayed accessible. Interestingly, with the official site for the HORI Split Pad Pros, for a lot of the models that are out there, they don't necessarily say they're compatible with the OLED dock, but I've seen videos of people that have the OLED and some of these older SplitPad Pros, and the OLED can dock just fine. I think the biggest thing is these little like nubs on the back. I guess these are barely too big to comfortably sit in the OLED dock, but if there are people that have docked their OLED switches despite the size of these, I don't know, I just kind of find that funny. And yeah, there's no way just out of the box for these to be usable in TV mode, because yeah, these are designed for handheld use only. Now granted, within the past couple months, HORI has made basically an attachment that you slide both of these onto, and you can use these as a wired Switch controller, even complete with a headphone jack like a lot of other wired, officially licensed third-party controllers. But the last time that I checked, you can't get that attachment separately, so if I wanted to get that for my SplitPad Pros that I have, I would have to be spending like $80 just for that. Now I do bring up the point that these can only be used in handheld mode by default, is that these are $50. With that same money, you can get a more functional wireless third-party controller. Now granted, you can't really easily use this in a handheld setup, but I bring that up just to show you the disparity of functionality because, you know, this can be used wirelessly and it has motion. And yeah, it is nice to have the turbo and assign features on these. However, there is a limitation. Because these are two different units, basically the buttons that you're allowed to assign to each paddle are limited to the other buttons that are on that pad. So for example, I can't, say, assign up on the D-pad to the right paddle here, because, you know, they're separate. Now, for most people, that really won't be an issue. Most people probably won't even use the back paddles to begin with, although they really are a good feature. More controllers need to have back paddles. With all of those caveats being said, I still don't think this is a bad option. It's just you have to be aware of these caveats when you go to buy them. Really, if you're just looking for something to make the system more comfortable to play in handheld mode around the house, these are a great option, assuming that you don't need motion or rumble. And honestly, this is a pretty decent D-pad. It's like a good middle ground of mushy but tactility. It doesn't feel overly mushy like, say, the DS Lite D-pad, but the tactility is just enough to where it's like you know that you're hitting the D-pad direction. I have had these for the better part of a year, and I have played a good amount of games on these. Like I said, I played through a large portion of A Hat in Time, and I played through basically the entirety of Danganronpa in handheld mode with the split pads. And for both of those playthroughs, these did quite well. So let's say you did want to keep the functionality of the Joy-Con, but still want to make it more comfortable. Enter a product whose name sounds like an adult toy, the Satisfye Zen Grip Pro. Like, why? Why that word? You get some really nice rubberized grips, and the idea is that you slide it in from the top like this instead of snapping it in like that. Set it in like that, and push down like so. There we go. And the rest of the grip is made of a smooth plastic. The like rubber bumpers that are inside do tend to leave these like weird streaks on the back of the system, but you can wipe them off pretty easily with just either a basic cleaner or water. But honestly, I don't really care at this point. And this grip's sort of biggest claim to fame is this asymmetrical grip. The idea is that most games have you jumping between the face buttons and the right stick. So this grip, if you see, is pointed more so out compared to this one that is more parallel with the system. Means that, yeah, you get, it's kind of hard to see, but you do get this asymmetrical grip. the first versions of the Satisfye grip, this was a way more pronounced asymmetrical grip. But they kind of toned down on that just because some people thought it wasn't comfortable. And while I personally don't notice the asymmetrical right grip, I still think that this adds some much needed ergonomics. This was the first one of these ergonomic solutions that I got for the system, and it's been hard for me to play this in handheld mode without the grip since. And even when I'm not using the grip, I've still been keeping these little thumbstick grips on my Joy-Con. The specific bundle that I got came with these. I'm not sure what all bundles do and don't come with the thumbstick grips, but yeah, they've made using the Joy-Con sticks just so much better. So they do have a bit of extra thickness around the sides, and that does impede the range of motion that they have. However, if you go to the system settings and controllers and sensors, you can actually, where is it? Oh, it's calibrate control sticks. If you just go in and calibrate it and, hit X and do the recalibration, they have a whole video on their channel about this. But basically, if you recalibrate the sticks, once you have the thumbstick pads on, then it should give a more proper range of motion. And at one point, I did try that, like once I first got the grip and the thumbstick pads, and for whatever reason, I just couldn't get it properly calibrated. But just a combination of persistence but patience with continuing to tilt the stick in the direction that it wants me to tilt it, like here. Sometimes it just wouldn't sense, like this. It wouldn't sense that I'm tilting it down, but if you just do it again and you don't, force the stick, then it should give you a better reading. Maybe. Hello. Yeah, this is kind of like the biggest complaint about the sticks. With the Joy-Con that I do have the pads on, I do have them calibrated so then it gives the proper range of motion, but it did take quite a bit of time just finagling with the calibration like that. Now, Satisfye does have a new type of thumb grip called the Rise pads, and I've been wanting to get a set of them for a while. It's just that that price tag. And that's probably my biggest complaint about Satisfye just in general, is that they do have pretty high price tags. That being said, basically all the products from them that I have, I've gotten them on sale, and those sales do make the prices a little bit more manageable, but you'll still be paying more than other accessories. And you'll especially be paying a high price tag if you're not living here in the land of the free and home of needing a vehicle to get anywhere. I've heard people complain about the high import costs of the Satisfye products. That's probably obvious considering that the company is based here in the US. Although, they have their manufacturing in China, but that's beside the point. And because of that, I think it's worth it to spend the extra money for one of the case bundles. Now, this is the Elite case bundle, and this color scheme of the blue was specifically for the holiday of 2019. They don't sell this specific color combination anymore because it was limited time, although they do have a selection of a couple different colors. Regardless, the Elite case is massive. You can see right here under where the switch sits is a spot for a big battery bank. I have the RAV Power 26,800 milliamp hour battery that they have, and this bundle comes with a USB-A to C angled cable. The idea is that you plug the cable into the bank, plug the cable into your switch, and then just sort of sit it in there, and you can have your switch charging when you're not using it. And for things like travel, that is such a good idea. I really haven't had to call upon that terribly often just because this is the V2 switch, and it still has a good battery life even though I've had it for coming up on 3 years now. But even with that, just knowing that I have all this extra battery power if I need it does kind of set my mind at ease just a little bit more. But yeah, you can hold like 19 games. There's like a little pocket here for like small things, like I have a micro SD card adapter, and there's also this massive and like pretty thick storage compartment. Now, what I've done with this in the past is I've put my Genki Covert dock in here with the USB-C cable, an HDMI cable, as well as an additional set of Joy-Con, because this bundle specifically also comes with one of their Joy-Con rails. It's literally just nothing more than a bit of plastic that you can use to keep a set of Joy-Con in one contained unit. So basically, I would have this in like the left part here, the cable's kind of coiled around in the center here, 4 Joy-Con straps kind of in the middle, and the covert dock sort of sitting down here. Yeah, it's a bit of a specific fit, but I mean, I've gotten it to work. It has been amazing being able to travel with the Switch with a small but very functional setup. So yeah, with the high price tag, this whole setup feels very high quality. We get this like nice luxurious feeling like felt where like the system sits and underneath the flap here. And the general construction of the grip does feel quite solid. But yeah, being able to still have the functionality of the Joy-Con, like the rumble, the motion, the NFC, does kind of make me place this higher than the SplitPad Pros in that regard. If I'm playing a game that does use any of those in a significant manner, but especially for travel, using the Joy-Con and how they allow for the easy multiplayer with a single pair even, but if you pair that with the second, you can play just about any 4-player game wherever you can find a TV. And while, yeah, it is a little weird pushing this out, it's not terrible once you get used to it, but first couple times you do it, you feel like you're gonna do something wrong. Ah, there we go. And so yeah, you can't keep it on the system when you go to dock it, if that means anything to you. Now, while this whole setup is quite comfortable, specifically playing Mario Kart with these thumbsticks, specifically like when you're playing in handheld mode like this, I'm someone who uses Y for accelerate and B for brake. I play 200cc a lot, and so it kind of accentuates the problem of the positioning of the right stick to where like it's difficult to get a good thumb placement when the stick is just that much taller and thicker. But like if it's really bothering me that much, I have just moved over and just used Y for accelerate like a pleb. While I don't have this handy, they do also sell a slim bundle. It can basically fit the Switch with the grip and 10 games. And that, plus the shoulder strap accessory that comes with some of these, that is honestly such a good setup. It was kind of liberating the first time that I got the Slim bundle, because I transferred the shoulder strap from the Elite case to the Slim bundle, and being able to still take the Switch with me, but hands-free in that small of a form factor was liberating. So yeah, if you're able to stomach the price of this, I think it's probably the best way to go. If you really can't deal with, especially the import prices, if you're not living here in the US, I do suggest seeking out Skull & Co. They sell a similar grip, but from what I've heard, they've had better import prices. But what if you just hate the Joy-Con and you just want to use the Pro Controller? Enter the Fixture. It's a pretty small and unassuming little like piece of plastic, but the idea is that you take the official Pro Controller and just sort of snap it in. Oh, frick. This always feels weird. Okay. Yeah, it puts like a weird death grip on the Pro Controller, but it kind of has to with how this works. And then with the system itself, just push it in. and you have something that looks similar to those phone mounts. But unlike those phone mounts, the fixture basically has these two friction hinges. That means that you can basically get any viewing position that you want. So this is actually how I use it most, is with the system in front of the controller. So it's actually closer to your face compared to just using it standard in handheld mode. And yeah, it does add quite a bit of weight because you're holding both the system and the Pro Controller. But because of the ergonomics of the Pro Controller, I feel like that kind of alleviates the weight. Now, I can see this extra weight not being comfortable for some people, like if there's someone out there that lacks the like hand or arm strength. So like that's legitimately like a problem some people have. So if that's the case, this probably isn't the solution for you. But for anyone else, like, I think this might become the main way that I use the system in handheld mode. Like, straight up replacing the Joy-Con with the Pro Controller for just my own personal single-player gaming. Like, I already use the Pro Controller as my main controller when docked anyways, and because it's far less likely to drift compared to the Joy-Con sticks, like, that just makes me way more mentally at ease. Even though my Pro Controller's left stick sometimes doesn't fully neutralize if I'm not touching it, like, it's still way more comfortable than basically slapping the Satisfye Band-Aid on the Joy-Con. Now, while that Band-Aid is well made, the wound is still not entirely ergonomic. And this is nice because basically any Switch game lets you use the Pro Controller instead of the Joy-Con. There's only like a select handful of games that specifically require you to use Joy-Con, but some of them it's only in specific scenarios. Captain Toad, you have to use Joy-Con if you're playing in the two-player assist mode, where one person just controls a cursor. Clubhouse forces you to use Joy-Con in single-system multiplayer. Luigi's Mansion 3 forces you to use Joy-Con or Pro Controllers in the Screen Park if you're playing with 5 to 8 players, and so on and so on. But because it is such a small amount of Switch games that require you to use Joy-Con, you can still comfortably use this setup, like out and about, or even on trips, without really having to worry too much about not having Joy-Con. And just like the Joy-Con, the Pro Controller has rumble, motion, and NFC, so you still have all that same functionality. And if you go to take the Switch out of the fixture and dock it, you can still keep the fixture on the Pro Controller because you do have a pass-through for the charging hole. There's really nothing that's being obstructed if you keep it on the Pro Controller. Now, there are similar bumpers on the inside and around where the Pro Controller sits, kind of like the Satisfye grip. But yeah, again, with the Switch especially, it does leave like these weird streaks. I think we can maybe, my Switch is just kind of all sorts of fingerprinty, but like, yeah, you can see it especially there. It does leave these streaks, but you can easily just like wipe them out if you are that particular. And if you do take the Pro Controller out, you can basically use the fixture as a tabletop stand. I've never done that, but it's something you can do. Just like the Satisfye, you can also get a case. Now, this is quite a bit smaller, and you do have to basically push the Switch with the fixture down, like all the way to get it to fit in here. Why does this feel weirdly lopsided? I think that might just be me. Yeah, it can fit up to 10 games, and the compartment up here, of course, is not as big, but you can still fit a fair amount of stuff in here. I have gotten the Genki covert dock to fit in here with the cables. It is a bit of a tight fit, but I mean, you can get it to work. The case does feel a bit lower quality compared to the Satisfye. It's not like this is awful, it's just feels like it's noticeably made of lesser materials, despite being the same price. And speaking of price, it's priced around the same as the Satisfye grip, but if you're counting the price of a Pro Controller as well, yeah, this is the most expensive option. And this is the Fixture S1 that I have that fits the original Switch. They are on the verge of bringing out an S2 that will fit the OLED only. I actually didn't mention that. Satisfye does have a new version of their grip that's intercompatible with both the Switch and the Switch OLED. For those of you who don't know, the OLED is just a hair longer than the original Switch, so Satisfye and Fixture had to basically rework their products. So yeah, for the Satisfye, if you're getting one for the first time, just get the version 3, but with the Fixture, you do have to be more mindful, because the S1 is only for the original, the S2 is only for the OLED. But yeah, even with the added weight, I still think this is a good option if you just don't want to use Joy-Con altogether and just want to use the Pro Controller. Yeah, that kind of brings me to just the overall conclusion, is that there's really no one-size-fits-all option for everyone. Some people are going to be more attracted to certain attributes of one over the other. Or if you're crazy like me, you have all of them. Some may prefer how the SplitPad Pros feel and function over the Satisfye. Or if someone is just hardcore dedicated to the Pro Controller, they can just ditch the Joy-Con altogether. Because I'm kind of crazy enough to have all three, I use the SplitPad Pros sometimes just around the house. Although because of their somewhat limited functionality, I don't always use them. Again, it just depends on what it is that I'm playing. The Satisfye grip and case, I've been especially using when I've gone traveling, like having a whole dock setup with the extra controllers to be able to do impromptu 4-player gaming just anywhere there's a TV is so cool that like this has just become my de facto Switch travel setup. Well, this plus having the slim case in my bag, just in case if I want to use that depending on whatever situation. While I really haven't had the Fixture for long enough to really see how it fits in, it's probably going to be how I travel if I know that I'm just not going to be with other people that are going to want to play games. At least games that require the controllers. Like if we're playing Jackbox, like we just need the one controller to be able to do all the menu selection, so like this is still perfect. But I'm still excited to see how this is gonna fit into my whole like gaming flow, especially because I have owned a Pro Controller basically the whole time that I've had a Switch, and I very much so enjoy the Pro Controller. And yeah, even though the weight is definitely something to get used to, if you balance things out with the friction hinges, it's not really that bad. Yeah, the reason why I got the Pro Controller so soon is because I just play in docked mode way more than I do in handheld, so it's kind of funny that I have all these accessories that make playing in handheld mode more comfortable. But like, even though I prefer playing in docked mode, having one of these options to be able to more comfortably use the Switch like out and about it's game-changing. Even with the SplitPad Pros, if you want to main those, you can get cases that fit the Switch and the pads on. It's just not an option by default. And they told me to get a grip. Joke's on them, I have 3.